A very warm welcome to this webinar from URM, where we'll be focusing on the release of version 4 of the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. And we'll be looking at some of the more challenging requirements and how organizations should go about addressing them. Just by way of introduction, my name is Martin Jones. I'm one of the directors at URM, and I'm being joined by Alistair Stewart, Senior Consultant at URM and PCI Qualified Security Assessor, PCI QSA. Before we go through the agenda for today, I'd just like to say this is the latest webinar in a series of seminars and webinars, which we're delivering on a regular basis, covering a wide range of information and cybersecurity related topics, such as ISO 27001, GDPR compliance, Cyber Essentials, pen testing, amongst others. In terms of today's agenda, there are in fact 63 new requirements with version 4, and we'll be concentrating on what we see as the main requirements that are likely to be most challenging to meet. So in terms of the agenda, we'll be setting the scene at first in terms of looking at the transition timetable for version 4, before concentrating on what we see as probably the big three changes: multi-factor authentication, and the implications of the new requirements, payment page scripts, which applies to any organization involved in e-commerce, ASV scans. We'll be looking at the extra requirements for performing vulnerability scans conducted by a PCI approved scanning vendor, an ASV. And then we'll be addressing scoping and ensuring it's properly documented, the increased focus on supply chain security and risk management, and then considering how remote assessment activities could affect your report on compliance, your ROC, ensuring that you're ready for new evidence collection processes, and finally we'll be looking at customized validation approach introduced by version 4. It's worth stating at this point that the webinar, we believe, is equally relevant if your organization is producing a report on compliance, or ROC, or you're completing self-assessment questionnaires. Also, just like to say, we welcome any questions you may have during the webinar. If we don't get around to answering all the questions, we will email responses after the webinar. There will also be a post-webinar feedback form where you can ask any outstanding questions. Just in terms of the introductions, firstly, for those of you not familiar with URM, we're dedicated to providing high quality, cost effective and tailored consultancy and training in the areas of information and cybersecurity, data protection, business continuity and risk management. We were formed back in 2005, so we've got an 18-year track record to call upon, and have been involved in over 350 successful certifications to standards such as ISO 27001 and ISO 22301. Our consultants are renowned for their passion and have typically worked both sides of the fence, e.g. as security managers or directors as well as consultants. In terms of talking of passionate consultants, I'm delighted to say I have Alistair Stewart with me today. Alistair's been involved in information security for 14 years and has been a QSA for 8 of those. He's one of the most experienced PCI practitioners in the UK and has been involved in over 100 PCI assessments. Of particular relevance to today, Alistair will be sharing his recent experiences of helping organizations prepare for the transition to version 4. Okay, without further ado, let's start with the transition timetable. Alistair, I guess the three fundamental questions here are: when do I need to start moving to version 4? When will version 3 retire? And how long do I have to implement the new requirements?
Yes, thanks, Martin. Those are usually the first questions we were asked when version 4 was first talked about some years ago, and they're still the questions we get now is when do we have to do it? What are the deadlines and what are we working to? And they're perfectly valid questions. Fortunately, the PCI Council, when they release new versions of the standard, there's quite a lead up, there's quite an overlap time, and they have quite long sunset dates, especially when it comes to newer requirements. So despite the fact that it was released in March 2022, as a QSA company, we were aware of the pre-release version for about 18 months before that. And then when they did release it, they said there would be a 2-year overlap. So that means you've got till 31st of March 2024 before version 3 becomes not a valid certification. So right up till the end of March, you can still certify to the old version